And I guess that'll be a segue into just one other thing I wanted to address, because it's a live stream. I got to get out of here pretty soon. But we live in a very violent culture. We live in an imperialist country and an imperialist culture that is just awash in violence. There are a lot of people trying to score cheap political points over the wave of mass shootings that we've seen. We've seen 3 major mass shootings across the country. Everyone's trying to, well, you know, professional political operatives are trying to point the finger at their political enemies. But we can't point the finger at one person or one factor. And I want to think about it historically. These slaughters, most recently, I think 21 children were slaughtered in a classroom in Texas. Think about it in terms of the killing of hope in this country when revolutionary leaders, reformist politicians who stood up for the poor and stood up against the Vietnam War in the 1960s started to shake the foundations of power in this country. And one by one, they were gunned down, supposedly by lone gunmen, advancing the interests of the warmongers, the war state, and the kind of people who right now are in a playground for the rich, a hyper-securitized playground secured by 5,000 high-powered, 5,000 militarized cops in Davos at the World Economic Forum. Since that wave of assassinations, and since the neutralization of revolutionary movements in the 1960s and early 70s, we haven't seen those kind of assassinations of leaders or attempts on the lives of leaders. Instead, we've seen the working class kill its bloodbaths within the working class. The killing of America as the country was swamped by corporate America with high-powered weapons, with psychotropic pharmaceuticals, and with a nihilistic, digitized culture of violence that now can be experienced in virtual reality through the metaverse and the Oculus, simulation shooter games. And I think this toxic brew is what is leading to these mass shootings we're seeing week after week, along with the legitimization by Democrats who say that they are anti-gun of massive arms shipments to literal Nazis and jihadists from Syria to Ukraine. And so I wanted to close with the words of someone who might have been president on violence in this country. This is Robert F. Kennedy Sr.'s speech, "The Mindless Menace of Violence."
Violence breeds violence. Repression breeds retaliation. And only a cleansing of our whole society can remove this sickness from our souls. For there is another kind of violence, slower, but just as deadly destructive as the shot or the bomb in the night. This is the violence of institutions, indifference, inaction, and decay. This is the violence that afflicts the poor, that poisons relations between men because their skin has different colors. This is the slow destruction of a child by hunger, and schools without books, and homes without heat in the winter. This is the breaking of a man's spirit by denying him the chance to stand as a father and as a man amongst other men. But we can perhaps remember, if only for a time, that those who live with us are our brothers, and surely we can begin to work a little harder to bind up the wounds among us, and to become in our hearts brothers and countrymen once again.
Well, soon after that speech, as we all know, RFK Sr. was gunned down and became a victim to the mindless menace of violence. And maybe perhaps his assassination was not so mindless. Perhaps it was more calculated than we've been told. But in any case, I wanted to close with those words. Thanks for being with us for these 2 hours. Thanks a lot, Aaron. We'll be back next week. Peace.